China's Belt and Road Initiative, a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure investment platform, has positive economic implications for developing countries. At the just concluded New Economy Forum in Beijing, China, a panel of discussants assessed the impact of the Belt and Road Initiative in Africa, calling for the right policies to drive the initiative. Let's take a listen.
There's been massive investments in the continent, in Tanzania, in Mozambique, and in Nigeria, just to mention a few countries. What would you say are the deliverables? What can you point to?
Let me quickly just talk about the Sino-Africa relationship, because this is a really important issue. I think before Belt and Road Initiative, I think several considerations. First one, we really take Africa as a very important continental. It's not only one country, because this continental, including big population, and of course, lovely people. I visited nearly 20 countries in Africa. And when I meet the people there, really love all of them. Because you can see the natural, you can see people open their heart, you can see they're smiling, and you also see the lovely children. I really feel this is a big continental. That means the group of the people in Africa should become a very, very important population in the world. The second one, of course, Africa has a very important relationship with China. When China started working in the world internationally, means Africa Group gave us great contribution and great support, especially for the UN membership. Number three, I think the same process for China and Africa.
Belt and Road is the new globalization, as Madam said. And in that sense, if you think about the China-Africa relationship is a subset of the trans-Indian Ocean trade patterns that have been strengthening ever since the 1990s. If you think about the commodities super cycle era of the 90s and 2000s with high commodities demand from China and Asia more broadly, that created a lot of options for Africa and for South America in terms of global diversification of their exports. And Belt and Road now and the role of Africa in that is recreating actually what in the 15th and 16th centuries we called, or historians now call, Afro-Eurasia, right? And the Afro-Eurasian trading system, the Afro-Eurasian world, was most of the world. And today it is, again, it's most of world trade, most of the world population. What I love about this word, Afro-Eurasia, it contains Africa, Europe, and Asia. And if you look at the membership of Belt and Road, what do you see? Of course, again, it's mostly the countries of these three mega regions and zones. And so Africa becomes a very, very important pillar of this. So the deliverables are, in a way, a continuity of this process that began in the 1990s. It began with raw material exports, simply focusing on those trade complementarities. They've been very important.
I was really intrigued that McKinsey said that there were 10,000 SMEs in Africa, 10,000 Chinese SMEs in Africa, 90% of them privately owned, right? So that's, a lot of Chinese companies are just in Africa making investments, just going ahead and doing their business, just like Ngozi said, that aren't specifically connected to the Belt and Road Initiative. I think for us as a group, our relationship with the Chinese has been very productive. I think also because the conversation between a private sector company and a private sector entity are different, right? So a lot of the stories that we hear about white elephant projects that are, financed, conceived, designed, financed, implemented by 100% Chinese entities, some of those can be a bit problematic. Like we saw in West Africa, a small country canceled the whole airport project because it wasn't really what they needed and it wasn't a loan that they wanted to take. But I think from a private sector, dealing private sector to private sector, we've really had a very productive relationship.
If you do the map and try to look, China is in every single country on the continent. And like Dr. Zhao said, I think they've been since the 60s and 70s. This is a long-standing thing and they've just spread. And Parag, you're quite right that a few countries, I think about, you said 6, maybe 10, have most of the investments and the trade, but they're all over. And they're beyond infrastructure, they're in agriculture, they're in health, they're in social, they're in grants. And so there are all kinds of activities going on the continent. So that's the first point. So Belt and Road, to me, I saw more as an organizing theme or framework to try to organize China's investments. Because right now, if you ask from what I learned, the Chinese government said 125 countries have signed Belt and Road agreements all over the world. I don't know how many of those are in Africa, but I know that it includes some countries like mine, which are not on the Belt and Road. Like Nigeria, like, Ghana and some other countries that are outside of that area. So that's the first point. There is Chinese involvement everywhere. I think the second point I'd like to make is that China has many actors on the continent. And there's another map I have showing just who is involved. So there's the Chinese government, of which there are multiple agencies, there are SOEs. Then you have the private sector, like Zuera was saying, that is also an actor on the continent. And you even have counties here, or provinces, that have province to county, province to state relationships. So the point I'm trying to illustrate is it's a very deep relationship, much more than people think. And I think it has been a little bit chaotic in a way, and the Chinese government is trying to systematize it now by creating this new aid agency, trying to realign the way that it manages the relationship.
Dr. Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, former finance minister of Nigeria, speaking there on the China Belt and Road Initiative at the just concluded New Economy Forum in Beijing. Well, South Africa's struggling state power firm Eskom made a surprise 1.3 billion rand profit from April to end September, roughly doubling the amount made in the same period last year. Eskom's financial performance is typically stronger in the first half of the year as it sells more electricity during South Africa's winter season and does less maintenance. South Africa's energy regulator had also granted Eskom a more than 13% average tariff increase from April. And finally, online retailer Jumia Technologies, popularly called the Amazon of Africa, has shut its e-commerce business in Tanzania in a review of its portfolio. Jumia, which has seen its share price plummet since a Wall Street debut in April, also suspended its e-commerce business in Cameroon on November 18. With an e-commerce business similar to Amazon's and a classified portal like Alibaba's, Jumia sells its own stock and takes a cut of third-party transactions on its website. Its Tanzanian e-commerce business ceased on November 27, and Jumia says it will continue to service vendors and customers via its classified business. Well, that's a wrap on the program for today, as well as the week. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimezie Obi Iwago.